Hey there, 10th grade English. It's Mr. Hanks here. I'm making this little YouTube video to discuss some of the material that you should be working on during this break. As a reminder, our daily Zoom meetings are Monday through Friday, 11:15 to 11:45 a.m. I've yet to hear from some of you, so please get in contact with me. Let me know that you are there, that you're doing the work. Continue to send me the work so that we're all on the same page, because if you put this off until the last minute, you could be in a world of trouble once that day comes. So hopefully you have your packet for the work that's required of you from April 6th through the 17th. If you don't, you definitely need to contact me and let me get you a copy of that. So I wanted to do a reading of Antony's speech from William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. What you are required to do, 10th graders, is read this in your vocab, spelling, and poetry book. Actively read it a couple of times, and then you're going to do an in-depth analysis of it, of 2 paragraphs of 7 sentences or more, detailing your thoughts that are on the excerpt from the monologue, and it needs to be supported with textual evidence from the speech. Also, you're going to need to select another work of William Shakespeare's. It can be, you're not going to select a full work, but an excerpt from a play, a sonnet, soliloquy, monologue, any of the like, and you'll do an analysis of that as well. It'll be the same length, 2 paragraphs, 7 sentences each. So here we go. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them, the good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under the leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man. So are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. This can be found on page 114. So I'd like for you to read that. It might help to, go on YouTube and find video of someone performing that live, because then you can see the specific inflections and pick up on tone that are sometimes lost when you're just reading something to yourself. Okay? So make sure you do that and get that to me as quickly as possible, and make sure that you are continuing to work on all aspects of your research paper. If you encounter any issues, then please let me know. Remember that your research paper is half biography, half critical book review, and it should be focused on an author. Information on that can be found both within your packets and in your textbook. So I wanted to also spend a moment talking about the exercise that you're required to do on page 299, which is recognizing complex sentences. Now remember, a complex sentence contains one independent clause. That's a group of words with a subject and verb that can stand alone as a sentence. That's what differentiates it from a dependent clause, because a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. But the complex sentence contains one independent clause and at least one dependent or subordinate clause. So an example of that would be, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Consent thou not, that's an independent clause, even though it's only 3 words, because it has a subject and verb. Thou is the subject, consent is the verb, and it conveys a complete thought. Do not consent. And then the dependent clause would be, if sinners entice thee. Sinners is the subject, entices the verb. Doesn't convey a complete thought. Entice thee to what? We don't know. It's sort of a cliffhanger in that sense, so it does not convey a complete thought. So remember, a complex sentence, one independent clause, at least one dependent or subordinate clause, but there can be multiples. What you have to do in these exercises are underline all the subjects. Each clause is going to have their own subject, and each clause is going to have their own verb. Underline all the subjects once, verbs twice, and then bracket off the dependent clauses. I want to go ahead and do number one together so we can get started off on the right page. Number one says, this is page 291, Sir Francis Smith, a New England clergyman and editor, was the poet who wrote the words for America, quote unquote America. So America is a piece of work. Sir Francis Smith, a New England clergyman and editor, was the poet. Okay. Well, that could be a sentence in and of itself. That has a subject and verb, but the sentence, as we can see, continues on after that. So obviously, our independent clause is going to begin with Samuel and then end with poet. So we're going to be looking for the subject and verb in that clause. Samuel Francis Smith, that's the guy the sentence is about. So that is clearly the subject. Samuel Francis Smith, a New England clergyman and editor, was the poet. Was. There's our verb. So one line under Samuel Francis Smith, two under was. Now, we have who wrote the words for America. That's going to be our dependent clause. Let's bracket that off. One in front of who, one after America. Who wrote the words for America? Who is going to be our subject, and wrote is going to be our verb. If you have any questions on that, then get back to me and we will discuss. Be on the lookout for words like who, because dependent clauses are often introduced by those introductory words. Who, whom, which, that, whose, after, although, as, because, since, when. They often begin the second part of the sentence. So make sure that you're on the lookout for those guys. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.